Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our 24th hour preview episode. I don't know whether to call this a free fall or a focus. It's neither of those things. This is just a little mini episode preview of the great anniversary event that we have coming up. And I do not like talking to myself. I don't like talking to an empty room, even though I know people are going to be watching this later. So I am going to be joined by my compatriot, the Beau to my Luke Duke, Mr. Craig McKee, and we're going to be talking about the event that you see right there behind me on the screen called the 24th Hour. Craig, I'm excited about this. You've been step by step with me along the way, along with our Director of Marketing, Jeff Long, and Kamal Obaid, planning this event for a very long time. Give us your initial thoughts.
Well, thanks for having me here to talk about it. I think it's going to be a terrific event, and I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, there's some. It's not just that you've got some really good speakers lined up, but it's that you've got a really, I would say, eclectic group of speakers and interviewees and panel members and everything. You've just got such an interesting variety, I guess I would say. You've got people that are very knowledgeable about 9/11. You've got some people that are kind of, focus on other areas a bit more, like you've got, I guess you're going to want to go through the names, whatever, but I'm just thinking of somebody like Zach Vorhies, who's, deals with censorship and the whole kind of digital world and that sort of thing. So, it all relates to 9/11, whether it's directly or indirectly. So I just think it's going to be very interesting. And I think this is a time after 23 years now, this is a time really when the 9/11 truth movement has, kind of has to figure out where to go from here. I really think that's an important discussion that needs to take place, and I kind of see this conference as being like a beginning, perhaps, to that conversation that needs to take place, because there's a lot happening. There are things that have happened in more recent years that have gotten a lot of attention, but then you also have some really high-profile people that feel comfortable talking about 9/11 for the first time. And we even have some of those people involved in this conference. So it seems to me like an opportunity for the 9/11 truth movement. If people are feeling a bit safer, a little bit more secure in stepping out and saying that something's wrong with this story, something's wrong with this official story, then that's a signal to those of us that have been in the trenches doing this for years, that we have an opening here that we shouldn't just let go by. We've got to let people know, why does it still matter? Why does this stuff still matter? And not be too quick to sort of step away from 9/11 and then look at more current things as if 9/11 is not as important anymore. It's just as important as ever, and it's not unrelated to many of the things that are also going on in the news, right now and in recent years. There's whenever you have kind of the establishment using deception to manipulate things, it's going to connect something like 9/11 to some other things. And so even though that's not AE doesn't go into those areas in terms of its own research, but I think it's a really cool thing to hear some of those voices from the outside, and just to sort of see how we can, what we can learn, and how we can sort of figure out how we want to go forward.
Yeah, and some of the things you touched on before was the thinking that went into the title of this. So some people might say the 24th hour. What the heck is that about? Why would you call it that? And when we were talking about this and planning this, I just had this vision of a clock, right? So I want our audience to do this with me. Imagine you have a clock. September 11th, 2001 is right at midnight. And then every year that passes from that event is another hour that passes on this clock. And if you look at it that way, then we are starting the 24th hour before we come to a new day, right? So is it going to be another 9/11 at midnight, or are we going to have a brand new day that is going to be better? Of course, we can't make things better until we acknowledge the problems that we are facing now. So this has been a really bad day for the world ever since September 11th. But sometimes, you know, when bad days happen, the next day is a lot better. And that's what we're trying to do here through our activism at AE 9/11 Truth. That's what a lot of the guests at the 24th hour are doing through the things that they talk about. And we selected the guests because everything that they're involved with is related to 9/11 in some way. Even you were talking about Zach Vorhies, who we'll talk more about very soon. You know, his stuff is related to internet censorship. Well, what's the biggest problem that we're facing right now? Getting our message out, because Google wants to put us on a blacklist, shove a bunch of mainstream media in your face, and when you do searches for 9/11 Truth. So that is how we went through and decided to reach out to these people to be part of this important broadcast. And I'm very proud of the title. You have any thoughts on the title and the new day and the clock that you heard so much about when we were planning?
I think you summed it up pretty well. I think, you know, I guess I mean, a name is, you know, it just represents something. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to explain everything. It's just kind of it's kind of a hook, I guess. And you know, I think we are entering. I think this is you know, we are entering, I guess this will be the last year of that 21st, 24. And I think, you know, it is appropriate because it's, you know, it will be a new day, so to speak. And we have to kind of figure out, okay, we've done what we've done in the first 24 years, or I guess it's actually 23, but it'll be the beginning of the 24th, which is where the name comes from. But the first 23 years, you know, we've made our case. We've done a ton of research. We've got the official story, I think, pretty much debunked. And now we've got to keep nailing down evidence, but we've also got a new challenge, which is, you know, how to. I mean, this is not really a new challenge, I guess. How to get the message across is not new, but maybe the environment is a little different than it has been in the past. You know, we've got new challenges. You know, you mentioned internet censorship. You know, things were a lot different in the late 2000s. So, you know, we were being heard. We were getting a big audience. People were filling auditoriums to hear David Ray Griffin speak, and you know, and that sort of thing. So now we have all kinds of additional obstacles to kind of get around. So it's a new day, and I think we have opportunities, but you know, with new opportunities, we have new challenges too. So
they didn't count on us. They didn't count on us. And I'm not talking about me and Craig personally. I'm talking about the 9/11 Truth movement. They didn't count on people taking the internet, all of this brand new, wonderful technology that was available to us, and actually talking about something that is real, really, that is provable, and is this important for the world, and actually putting this much effort and energy into it to be able to get this message spread around to the point where even mainstream media has to acknowledge it, to the point where everybody has at least heard of the stuff that we bring to the table. They didn't count on that. And so they had to go through and neuter the internet in whatever way that they could. I mean, yeah, the internet is still there. You'll get your cat videos, all right? You'll get your stupid TV show reactions. You'll get your AI-generated videos talking about some factoid about something completely unimportant. You can get all that, but they are trying to deplatform us, delist us, make sure that you don't hear the voices of 9/11 Freefall or any of the other people out there talking about this stuff. So that's not all we talk about in the 24th hour. It's just a super important thing to me, and I think for the 9/11 truth movement. So let's talk about some of the guests that we are going to be bringing on to this broadcast. First one is Dr. Jill Stein, Green Party presidential candidate. Craig, what do you think of them apples?
Well, I think that's a major coup to get her. She's, I mean, to get any presidential candidate, even one from a smaller party. I mean, the chances of getting one of the two main ones are virtually zero. But to get anybody that's running for president is pretty cool. And Jill Stein is not just kind of any fringe presidential candidate. She got a lot of media attention when she ran in 2016, and she's very articulate. She makes very strong arguments for her positions. I mean, we're never going to agree with everybody. We're never going to completely agree with every guest. So, but I like a lot of what she has to say. She's certainly suggested an openness to a new investigation of 9/11, which is of primary interest to us. I mean, I think she's unique in among the candidates in terms of her willingness to criticize Israel for the Gaza situation. That kind of makes her stand out. So I think it's just a huge coup to get somebody like that. It's just fantastic. So yeah, it's a really good sign, I think.
I think, and I don't know what metric you weigh this under, or weigh this on, but I think the Green Party is probably the #1 third party in this country, to the point where, I mean, when Ralph Nader was running back in 2000, I think that made a dent, and some people blame him for Bush getting elected, but I don't believe in that logic. If Al Gore was really good, then all those people who voted for Nader would have voted for Gore, but he wasn't, right? Yeah. And this two-party system, well, it's not even really a two-party system. People just think it is because the media shoves that idea down your throat. There's even people out there who think that the Constitution mandates that you have two parties. There's a lot of people who our civics classes in school have failed them. There's no mention in the Constitution of political parties or anything like that. But she, as the candidate for the leading third party, years ago called for a new 9/11 investigation. Of course, we're going to be asking her about that, and she'll be sharing her thoughts on that situation. So yeah, very happy to get a chance to talk with Jill Stein. We're also going to have Jimmy Dore. I know that you are a big fan. I'm actually subscribed to Jimmy's to his mailing list, or whatever you call it, subscribe to his podcast myself. Give us your thoughts on that.
Well, like you said, I'm a huge fan of him. I watch his videos all the time, and I relate to him in many ways, even though I have no stand-up comedy background. But I relate to him in so many different ways. I mean, he's basically a left-winger who has become absolutely disgusted with what now passes for the left, and that completely echoes my experience. So I and I relate. And when he talked during COVID about how all his fellow stand-up comedians kind of abandoned him and disowned him, I thought, yeah, I relate to that too. That was part of also my experience, although not with stand-up comedians. But I just think he's just he's a special individual, I think, because he's got the ability to really, I mean, he really understands issues very well. He's now talking about 9/11, which he didn't do particularly. I always had the feeling that he was kind of a closet 9/11 truther, but I kind of, and I actually remember thinking, well, it's I wish he would talk about it, but I sort of understand because he doesn't want to totally turn off his audience. But the playing field's different now, and he feels he can talk about it, and that is like a huge step forward. I mean, he had Leroy Halsey on his show a few months ago, and like, wow, that's fantastic. And so Jimmy's just the greatest. I think he's very not only entertaining, but um, I follow a lot of American politics through his show or whatever. But I think to me that was the guest for this conference that I was the most happy that we got. So yeah, so hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to him again in the future. I hope so.
Yeah, I heard of him first through Kelly, our former COO here, and for years she would reach out to Jimmy, send him stuff about Building 7. We don't know if they had anything to do with him waking up to 9/11 or not, but there's been a lot of effort to reach out to him for years. So it is an honor to have him join us for this conference. And I think comedians have more influence over the public than the newsmen do. I mean, Anderson Cooper, you can call the MSM comedians. I don't think they're intending to be, but there's a lot of hilarious moments watching them try to, stump for empire and evil and all that horrible stuff. But I think Jimmy Dore has more influence. People like him or Jon Stewart or whatever, any comedian that talks about political issues has more influence than a Don Lemon or an Anderson Cooper or I don't know who's somebody on Fox. I can't even think of them now because I don't even watch it anymore, but I do. And so it's a great voice to have out there on the side of 9/11 Truth.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I mean, the thing that I continue to love about Jimmy is that he hasn't sold out the way a lot of comedians have. I mean, late night television with people like Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers and different people like that, Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, these people are all just establishment shills, in my opinion. They're all like almost unwatchable now. Whenever politics comes into the conversation, I find I can't even watch them because there's a danger that'll come up and I'll have to sort of stomach what they have to say. So. And even Jon Stewart. I mean, Stewart's, he's taken some good shots at the Democrats recently, but I mean, he's really a sellout too, in my opinion. So he used to be like, I used to love watching The Daily Show 10, 12, years ago. He seemed to be pretty good at satirizing the establishment then. But even then, it was more superficial stuff. But yeah, I lost a lot of respect for him in more recent years. And I think a lot of people did.
Well, comedy has been weaponized along with everything else in society against anybody that questions the establishment. And how this happened, I mean, it's like losing your hair. It happens so gradually. You don't even notice it until when, oh my God, it's like further back and everything. But I've seen this with the oh God, who's the guy who's on the Tonight Show now? What is the, I don't like him. Oh, Jimmy Fallon. You can see how that show has been weaponized against certain groups of people. And there's the other person. Oh, God. I don't even watch them. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah. They're both named. But so, yeah, but we have Jimmy Dore at this event, and you'll be hearing his thoughts on 9/11 and other matters we'll be bringing up. So the next one, we talked about this before, is Zach Vorhies, Google whistleblower, released 950 pages to the Department of Justice, showing how Google has censored people that have views different than Google's, the Google management's, which basically is pretty much their view as establishment narrative. Very important to the truth movement. What do you think, Craig?
Well, I mean, I haven't watched a lot of him, so I'm looking forward to seeing that, when you talk to him. But I certainly have had my own experiences with Google and I think a lot of people have seen how things have changed in more recent years. I mean, if you search for what we would call, I guess, a conspiracy related topic, today, you're gonna have to go quite some way down the list before you get past all the CBSs and the PBSs and Popular Mechanics and all these official or should I say, like, sort of mainstream establishment media, mainstream media outlets. So people have to, like, for my own, in my own case, for my own blog, like, now people only get there if they already know that they're going for some particular thing. If they know about an article, they might go there, but there's no way they're just going to look through Google and stumble over it unless they throw my name in there or something. So it's a lot different than it used to be, and it's quite despicable what they've done, because as I've told you, as I've commented on your show before, I used to get 15, 16, 1,700 hits a day on the blog, and then when they changed their algorithm, like 90% of that just disappeared overnight. So that's just control. That's just control of information. It's censorship in a way that a lot of people don't see that unless it happens to them, but they may not even realize just how much information that they no longer have easy access to. And the harder you make it for people, it's like if you had a bookstore where all the books that really challenged the establishment were in the sub basement, way in the corner, in a box under some a tarp or something. It's still there. You can still ask for it. You can still find them, but you're not going to walk through the middle of the store and see something that intrigues you and buy it because it's in the basement.
You got to get the torch and go down. You got to pull on the candle light or whatever, what's the candle holder thing called? I don't know. But you pull on that and the door opens and you got to go through the catacombs, being led by Andy Steele or Craig McKee to go find the 9/11 truth information, the secret stuff, but you got to stay quiet and don't let them find it. No, it's almost like they treat us like a virus, right? And so, like, you and me, we're unsavable in the eyes of the establishment. We're already awake to this. We're doing stuff. So they're just going to quarantine us into this little camp here, Craig and Andy and all the others. And there's the barbed wire, but like nobody can come near us because you don't want to get infected with our reason and common sense. That's what's going on the internet. So anyway, that is what we're going to talk about with Zach Vorhies. Definitely worth checking out. We've also got Danielle Ganser will be giving a presentation at this event. Talk about that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that because Daniela spoke at AE's conference in 2020, and he I think his focus mostly was on Operation Gladio because he has a very well-known book on the subject. And I'm not going to try to get the title because I'm going to get it wrong if I do, but it's NATO's Secret Armies, and then it's something else after that. So I can't remember the rest of it. But anyway, the good thing for this conference is that he put out a new book a couple of years ago called USA, the Ruthless Empire. And so he's going to talk about some of the things that come up in that book. So it's going to be a completely new and fresh presentation that he's going to do. And I think he's going to have some slides and things, I believe. So he's going to have some, he's just a very good, he's a historian, really. That's his kind of main thing. He's in Switzerland. And so he's going to have some really useful insights into how empires work and that sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has to say, and it's great to have him back after having him about, well, I guess 4 years ago at the AE event. He was very happy to come and join us again. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we need to know the history of what goes on because people just believe the mainstream news. And so if you want to understand 9/11, understand what came before it. And his presentation on Gladio is exquisite. I remember that from 4 years ago, Operation Gladio and all of that. And just as a side note, I wonder who comes up with the names for these operational titles at the CIA. And if it was anything like the 9/11 Truth Movement, there would be arguments for like 5 hours about what we're going to call the operation before they start talking about the planning. But, but definitely check that out. Worth seeing at this conference. We've also got Dr. Madhava Sethi. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. But he wrote a book, and it was called Woke, an anesthesiologist's view, and he talks about 9/11 for an entire chapter in this book. I read it, and he talks about other issues not related to AE in there as well, and just sort of looks at it from, I don't know, a very neutral standpoint, and just sort of explores people's natural biases to looking into these topics. Again, it doesn't argue for or against the topics that he covers in that book, but just sort of looks at like the walls that people put up and the possibilities that, you know, this topic could be true that people don't consider. But there's an entire extensive chapter on September 11th and 9/11 truth in this book. So we'll be talking to him about that. Do you have any comments on this, Craig?
I don't know. I have not read that book, so I don't know a great deal. You actually introduced me to this person, so I'm just looking forward to seeing what he has to say. He and I are now friends on Facebook, so that was nice. Once I became aware of him, his name popped up, and so I hit send friend request, and he accepted, so that was nice. So I don't know enough really to have more of a comment than that, but just that I think it's going to be great, and it's another example of having a really an interesting guest that isn't just coming from the same exact point of view as everybody else. It's not all just kind of one thing. It's people coming from at the topic from a variety of different angles. So that this one, I have no idea what he's going to say, but I'm looking forward to it.
Well, he was actually recommended to me by the person we're going to talk about next, Dr. Meryl Nass. She's an internal medicine physician and activist with an expertise in anthrax and, I don't have my glasses here, anthrax and bioterrorism. And she actually knew Bruce Ivins personally, and that is what we'll be talking about in this interview. Bruce Ivins, of course, is the guy that was blamed for the anthrax attacks of 2001. They talk about it like it's a separate thing from September 11th, but in my mind, it's all sort of mashed together because it all happened within days of the towers coming down. And, we haven't really visited that a lot on Free Fall or at AE. It's outside of our mission somewhat, but I think that this is critically important because the story that we got from the establishment media and from the government doesn't really make sense. And that's what she'll be talking about in this interview. Craig, your comments.
Well, yeah, this will be good. I mean, I interviewed Meryl for an AE article that I did about the anthrax attacks. I wrote that maybe 3 years ago, I think it was 2021 maybe. So I had some knowledge of her background and her position, and I think you're absolutely right that the anthrax attacks are absolutely interrelated. Before I comment more on Meryl Nass, I just point out that Graham McQueen did a fantastic book about the anthrax attacks, and in one of the chapters, and I won't try to sum up what he said because I don't know if I remember all the details well enough, but he points out direct connections between people that had connections to the anthrax thing and connections to the alleged hijackers of 9/11. So there were connections, and also the fact, that the anthrax thing, that the people that two of the people that really were in a position to delay the passage of the Patriot Act were Senator Pat Leahy and Senator Tom Daschle, and they were two of the people that got targeted with anthrax. So Graham McQueen, I think he's made the point that's a thing that's used to basically get people to do something. You kind of threaten them or make them, point out to them that they can be gotten to, and then suddenly the Patriot Act is adopted. So that's important, and I think what you also get from his book, and I know I'm a little bit off the Meryl Nass topic, but is just how the media seem to have foreknowledge or the idea of like the next thing is going to be a bioterrorism attack, like that could be coming any day now. We could be having like a biological attack. So whether the people writing that knew that it was coming or not, somehow they were being pushed to say that. So back to Meryl Nass. Yeah, you mentioned she knew Bruce Ivans, and she makes like a very strong case, which I think I deal with in my article, for why Ivans, not just that they didn't prove that he could have done this, but that he absolutely could not have done this. So that's important, because of course Ivans was kind of set up. He was the patsy in this whole thing, and so yeah, so that's important, and that's something she's not just not just like an activist who has gotten into this, but she's very widely quoted in mainstream media, even on the subject of anthrax and bioterrorism. So she has a profile even beyond our circles, I guess. So yeah, so that's going to be again another example of somebody that's coming at the topic from their own angle, but it helps to fill in the whole picture. It helps us to get an understanding, a deeper understanding of all the machinations of how things went down.
Absolutely. And then we got Ian Crossland, and he is a regular on the Timcast, hosted by Tim Pool. They cover culture, news, politics, also a YouTube producer, and just a really interesting guy. I've watched some of his videos. He talks about philosophy, that kind of stuff. And some could say it's a little out there, but it's kind of fun to go out there sometimes. And we're going to have a conversation. And one of the things, I'll bring up is, if this is a spiritual battle here in the 9/11 truth movement, or not in the 9/11 truth movement, though that goes on too, but just in America, and is 9/11 truth at the center of it. Any comments, Craig?
Well, I don't know him very well, but I know Tim Pool's. I know the podcast a little bit. I've watched a few. I've kind of gotten into. I spend perhaps too much time these days watching YouTube videos, but it has enabled me to get to know some of the commentators, on the different, coming from different political bents, I guess. And so I don't know a lot about Ian Crossland. I do know about Tim Pool's thing, and he's a very sharp person, and very he kind of knows what he's talking about generally. So I don't know more than that about Crossland, so I'm going to wait and see how that goes. But I think they're going to be, those guys are kind of, a little bit like Jimmy Dore, in that they're very entertaining. I think, they have a very natural style. It's that I think people will find interesting.
Absolutely. And then the next one, I'm just going to put him on here. Alex Stein, comedian, conservative YouTube personality, and he is the host of his Primetime with Alex Stein on the Blaze Media Network. Guy knows a lot about 9/11, and I think this is important because we have a lot of people who kind of lean to the left in this event, but Alex Stein leans to the right. And I think it shows that we've got everybody, every side represented here, because this is a unifying issue. It has nothing to do with socialized healthcare or any of these other wedge issues. I'm not saying it's not important, that debate, but there's a lot of wedge issues thrown out there to divide us. Got everyone at their throats arguing over things. But what I find is when I talk to people from either side of the political debate, they all kind of sound the same in terms of what they want from our government and from our world. Some very basic core things. And at the center of it, what I consider to be the most important, is a new investigation into September 11th. because the towers were brought down in controlled demolitions. Your thoughts, Greg?
Well, Alex Stein's, I mean, he's another one I've sort of, if you'd asked me this 6 months ago, I think I wouldn't have known who he was. But I have seen him. I mean, what's interesting to me about him, and I didn't know that he was knowledgeable about 9/11. So you've pointed that out to me. So that's what I want to hear from him. But I mean, he's a complete character and really over the top. He does, like, he'll confront people with a microphone and really, like, kind of ridicule the people on the other side of the political aisle, I guess. And some people will find him to be a little bit too much of a I don't know what word I want to use. I want to be careful, but too much of a character maybe for some people. But I think that's just another approach, another way of doing the same thing. If you can kind of make fun of ideas that need to be made fun of, then good for you, I say. So he's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think what I find interesting about him is, and I'd be curious to know what he would say about just the tactics that he uses, and why does he make those choices, and what is he what is he I guess what does he think he can achieve that way, maybe, that he couldn't achieve in a little bit more restrained way. He's a character, so that's one of the ones I'm most curious to watch, actually.
And we'll be talking about that too. And people need dramatic examples to shake them from their apathy. You know where I've heard that quote? Batman.
Who's that?
It was in The Dark Knight. But yeah, people need dramatic examples to shake them from their apathy. I'll quote it because I agree with the sentiments there. And, it gets people's attention. Obviously, you don't want to go overboard, stunts and everything. You don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to cause any property damage or whatever. But sometimes you need those uncomfortable moments. Like when I confronted that WABC reporter there on the street. Sometimes cringy is a superpower that you have to use for the cause of good.
That's right. And I'll tell you, this has nothing to do with the conference, but I'm very, very interested to see Matt Walsh's film that's coming out, I guess, in about 2 weeks. It's called Am I Racist? And he's the guy that did What Is a Woman a couple of years ago. So it's kind of uses that style that maybe originally was kind of advanced by Michael Moore back when Michael Moore was relevant 20 years ago. Now he's just a Democratic Party shill, so I don't think he's so relevant anymore. But I used to like Michael Moore. But that kind of comedic documentary style, it seems like Walsh has kind of picked that up, and except instead of being liberal, he's more on the right. But he's going to take on the whole critical race theory thing, which I think is going to be pretty interesting. Anyway, that's just an aside.
Yeah, I used to like Michael Moore too, back when he had a show called TV Nation. This was on when I was a teenager.
Oh, yeah. I watched. Yeah, absolutely. I watched that.
And I remember he had one where he was talking about the differences of border policies between Mexico and Canada, the U.S. governments. And, he would show all of the heavy guard on the Mexican border, and then he's showing the Canadian border, and he was sending people over the border with the most ridiculous, gimmicks. Like there was a hockey team goes roller skating over the border, and then a guy with a whole bunch of guns just hanging off of him, and they made him leave the guns in a box, but he got to enter the United States. So there's just all sorts of silly, ridiculous stuff. But, that got my attention and was a lot of fun. So absolutely. So we're going to be talking to Alex Stein now. Right now, as we record this on the page, Jeff has Shyam Sunder there, the sweaty, nervous front man for government and the National Institute of Standards and Technology's cover-up of the World Trade Center evidence. But hopefully by the time you get this video, folks, we're going to have another guest added. Sean Stone, son of Oliver Stone, who made JFK, and has been really into looking into the hidden story behind so many of historical events. And Sean Stone is an actor in his own right, public commentator. What's your thoughts on this guest, Craig?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know a little bit about him, I guess, and I can't wait to see what he has to say. I mean, I know he's a political commentator in his own right, quite apart from anything that his father's doing. It's kind of funny in a way that Oliver Stone did a 9/11 movie that was pretty, it didn't really challenge the official story at all. So, kind of a disappointment from the guy that made JFK, you know. So that's whatever that's worth. What were you
I got
to
to comment on that. I got to comment on that because, the media, the mainstream media, I'm probably the only person that the mainstream media woke up to 9/11 truth. And it wasn't that they were trying to, it was just the way they were behaving. Just seemed really shady. And when this movie World Trade Center came out with Nicolas Cage, like the first concern that they had was, is he going to be talking about a 9/11 conspiracy? And it was almost like they had to check that first. Like that was the first thing they had to say about this movie. And this movie came out not too long after 9/11, a few years or whatever. But that was something they had to establish first. Well, is he going to be talking about it being a conspiracy? Oh, no, it's not. Okay, fine. And I did watch the movie, and yeah, it's very, it's done from a very mainstream perspective, but it doesn't really I don't know. And it's been a long time since I saw it, so I'd have to watch it again, but it doesn't seem to reinforce the official story. It just focuses on the story of these firefighters that got trapped under the rubble when the towers came down. But there is a scene where they hear explosions and they're like, what are those explosions going off? And I don't know. And maybe I can, I should ask Sean Stone this. Does they have is that sort of a nod to the questions that were surrounding September 11th at the time? But that scene did exist if you watch that movie World Trade Center, where they're like, what are those explosions? I don't know. Something like that.
I should perhaps watch it again.
Yeah, maybe I'll watch it again tonight. Amazon Prime is great. You don't have to go to the video store or anything. Like $3, you got whatever you want. So that is our lineup. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just going to add before we get off of Sean Stone. This is a really good bit of timing too, because we just had RFK endorsing Donald Trump, and one of the things that Trump agreed to do, I guess, because of the endorsement, was to release all the JFK assassination documents, which of course he promised he'd do before and he didn't. So we'll have to see, but he promised to create a presidential commission on assassinations. So I think it'd be great to find out from Sean Stone what he thinks of this, in light of the fact that his father made, perhaps the most controversial JFK feature film that has anybody's made. I mean, not that there have been tons of them that are features, but I mean that was a hugely controversial one, and it certainly shoots down the lone gunman Lee Harvey Oswald claim of the Warren Commission. So it'd be very interesting to hear what Sean Stone thinks about that recent development, because it's and I'm curious. I'd be interested to know what his father thinks about it too. Anyway, so I think that'll be cool. That'll be really, really another great guest.
Yeah, we passed the deadline that was put at the end of JFK about when they're going to release the documents on such and such a date. And I remember, because my mom was really into JFK assassination and didn't believe the official story on RFK either. And she was like, you wait, I don't know if I'll be around when that date comes, but you wait and see if they release all of that. And it seemed like such a far off time back then. I was like 12. And now that time is now it's in the past, and we're talking about a new development with this. So that's just crazy. But, I think if there was a revelation about JFK that we had been lied to about that would have a huge impact on our country. So that just reinforces what I always say about September 11th, the impact, if we had the truth about that, the impact that would make.
It's the same people. I mean, very likely it's the forces that are doing both things, whether it's literally the same individuals or whether it's, it's still kind of the deep state that is manipulating events and manipulating and deceiving the public. So the Kennedy assassination was, back that happened back at a time when you could actually question establishment narratives, even on television. Some of the time, the Kennedy assassination was discussed openly and argued openly with people like Mark Lane and others. Today, of course, that's not going to happen. You're not going to turn on CBS and have them talk about thermite, at least not yet. Anyway, maybe they will.
Well, you know what's interesting though, and there's a scene that I've only seen in some kind of like extended version, and it got cut out of most versions of JFK. But there's a scene where Kevin Costner, who's playing Jim Garrison, of course, goes on to a late night show, and the host is John Larroquette. Now, it's not supposed, it's John Larroquette playing the host, and there's an interaction where the host is making fun of Jim Garrison and whatnot. And I had heard that was based on Johnny Carson. So what I had done is I went and found when Johnny Carson interviewed the real Jim Garrison, and I found it on MP3 and I listened to it at work. And I mean, listening to this, Johnny Carson was doing what the mainstream media does today. The same tactics, the same kind of attacks. Johnny Carson was a real shill. And he was, and I think this was a hit piece when they brought Garrison onto his program. It was just shocking because I only knew him as like this funny old man that retired and brought Leno in. But no, he was basically holding water for the establishment on the Kennedy thing. So you should listen to that if you haven't.
I have not. So I will look for it for sure.
So that is our lineup, folks. Of course, it's it's going to be an 8-hour event. So it starts at 11 Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. It's going to play out, and we're going to basically see what comes up. We're going to be also doing some interludes, having some fun along the way. And you can watch that exclusively at our YouTube channel. Of course, we're going to put it on other platforms later on as well, in case YouTube decides to, do what YouTube does and block it or something like that. But we will have all the individual interviews that we're going to be releasing within days after the event happens. But it's Saturday, September 7th, 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern, 8 hours. And it's a long event.
We've got a couple of panel discussions too, you might want to mention.
Oh my God! How did I forget that? Who's on that? Actually, talk about it. Nobody
important. It's all the people that aren't important enough to get individual interviews. Kind of got herded into that.
No, tell us about it because we do have a hour scheduled for a panel discussion with some names in the 9/11 Truth Movement, talking about some of the things that are affecting us most, which we've been talking about for this hour. But tell us more about it, Craig.
Well, I know you're going to be doing one with that's going to talk about the Scientific Integrity Act with that you're going to host with Roland Angle and Kamal Obeid and John Schuler. So that's going to be important. That's you've talked about that initiative a lot. So there's one that I'm involved in, and that is it's kind of the topic is kind of loosely kind of about where the 9/11 Truth Movement's going, but I think it'll probably be a bit of a free-ranging discussion. I have a feeling because we have it's actually a majority Canadian panel, which is kind of weird, but besides me, 2 other Canadians are joining us. We have Barry Zwicker, who is the very important figure in the 9/11 truth movement for many, many, many years. I mean, he literally is one of the few people that, he's the first person, Barry, who's in Toronto, he's the first journalist to dispute the official story of 9/11 on national television anywhere in the world, as far as we've been able to establish. We're not aware of anybody, and Barry's not aware of anybody, and I don't know of anyone. He was talking about that in 2001 in Canada, because he had a show. He had a sort of a show on, kind of like, I guess, it was Vision TV. So I guess it's kind of like a network, a bit like PBS. But anyway, so he had a media criticism show, and he talked about 9/11 way before anybody else was talking about it, including some of the really big names in the truth movement. People like David Ray Griffin. Griffin was very early. His first book came out in 2004, but Barry was on top of this in 2001. The other one is Professor Anthony Hall, who's from Lethbridge, Alberta, University of Lethbridge. He's a professor of globalization studies, professor emeritus. He's actually retired now, but so he's going to be there to talk about it too. And I remember we had him on our 9/11 and other deep state crimes teleconference a few months ago, and one of the topics that came up in that conversation was, why is it still important to talk about 9/11 all these years later? And he gave a really good answer to it. I'm not going to be able to quote it, but he gave a really good answer for why to recognize deceptions that come in the future. We can't forget about 9/11, because it is understanding how 9/11 unfolded and how all the deceptions worked. Though it's understanding that's going to make us able to see the same things being done in the future. So that was useful. So Anthony's there, and then we have our token American on the panel, which is Kelly David, who is the former chief operating officer of Architects and Engineers for many years. Kelly's not involved in the organization now, but she continues to be supportive and to lend any aid that she can. So she, has her point of view, and it just so it makes for an interesting group, I think. And the discussion, I think, will probably just kind of go where it goes. It's not going to be too rigidly directed. I don't think that we have that plan. So we'll kind of just see where it goes. But anyway, I know all those people, so it'll be a pretty comfortable one for me, I think, because we're all acquainted. So anyway, so those are the two panels.
You mentioned yourself, right? You're on the panel as well.
Yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I'm
Kelly is actually currently
75% Canadian content on that panel. Yeah.
Well, I'm there as well. So,
but you're the host, so you don't count.
Okay. Well, maybe not. But Kelly is on the board of Palestine Charity Team too, so she's still very involved in what's going on in the world. And definitely has a perspective, and having been in the 9/11 truth movement for so long. So yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a great panel. And of course, we've got the engineers, as Craig alluded to, with Roland Engel, Kamal Bey, John Schuler. We're going to be talking about Scientific Integrity Act, the challenges reaching out to the engineering profession. And of course, just the challenges overall of keeping this issue alive in the hearts and minds of our supporters, because sometimes you have to remind them how this is still affecting them to this day, which is something that we're always revisiting the theme of each anniversary, each time we have a new project. So definitely want to hear their perspective. So I'm going to remind everybody of the date again. It's September 7th, 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. And I introduced the show today as a mini-sode because I thought we would go 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops. I didn't prepare any notes or anything either. Usually I've got questions written out and a whole thing going, and I did not imagine that we would spend an hour talking about it, but there is just so much content there, so much to discuss, and we haven't even gotten to the actual event yet. And folks, it's not gonna look the same either. I've built a new set for this, just for this event. We're gonna have it once, and then after the event, it's gonna come down. But you're gonna see a whole different set behind me because we didn't want it to look just like another free fall or focus thing that people are used to. So you're going to have to wait to see what we did there. I think it looks pretty cool. You've seen it, Craig. What do you think of it?
Yeah. It's good. It's nice, a nice change, whatever. I also have been working very hard on my set, as you can see. I've put several books on the shelf there that I actually own. So I thought I would try to make this look as spiffy as possible. But your set has a little bit more involved effort that went into it than mine. So,
who was that sidekick musician guy to Letterman? Because with the keyboard there, I think you could like turn a spin around and do a little song, while we're or like a little musical riff, just a proper punchline.
This is I like to think of this as the Laurie Partridge room that I'm in here. So see who gets the reference to that.
Well, I've got the reference. I've got the set for the 24th hour literally inches from me right now, which involves another TV. And I've got all these TVs for some reason. They just happen to have been acquired over the years. So every time people come onto this show or whatever, I always tell them, welcome to Vegas, because there's always things flashing behind me here. But no, it's going to look good, and we've got some things planned. We got some cool stuff for the theme and all of that, because 9/11 is so important to do an event like this to remind people, of course, why it's still important, but remind people of the lives that were lost on that day. But it's also an opportunity for the truth movement to get together and sort of have their batteries charged again, and in the previous years, we used to go to live events. We kind of switched to the online events after COVID. Maybe we'll revisit live events again in the future. But everyone's kind of used to the online thing now. But it's a way for you to see all of the great people that are involved in this cause. And of course, this year we'll be talking about other issues expanding from 9/11 and sort of, again, get your batteries recharged and remind yourself out there why you are still in this fight. So one more time. Saturday, September 7th, 11 Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. And if you need the link sent to you, you want to be reminded about it, subscribe to our emails, ae911truth.org. It's the only way that we can communicate with you. The media doesn't help us out at all. And so if you want to know exactly what's going on here at AE911 Truth and get that link sent to your inbox so that you can watch the 24th hour. It's all free. We're not charging you for this. It's all free because we want as many people to watch it as possible. So subscribe to our emails if you haven't already. Craig, any final thoughts?
Well, I would say to follow up what you just said, I would say, I hope people will remember that how important AE and how important it is and what its role is in advancing the truth. So I hope people will donate to AE and be generous about that, because that's the only way that it can keep doing what it's doing. And doing conferences like this in addition to other activities that, and not charging anybody for them or whatever. The only way that can happen is if people are want to help out with some donations. But other than that, I think it's going to be a fascinating lineup. I'm really looking forward to it. I think this is really one of the things I'm glad to see from AE is something that really is. It show to me. It's like this is the kind of leadership that I think that it really is known for, and that it's going to. We need organizations like this that have a large amount of clout in the sense of just we have a lot of followers, we have a lot of people that support the organization, and it's important to keep that happening. So I think it's going to be a really good conference, and I think it's a good hopefully it'll just kind of lead to other good things for 9/11 Truth and for AE as we get into the 24th hour/year. So, just keep doing it.
Good way to slide that in, the title of the event. You get good at this. No, and we got great people here too. We got great people here at AE 9/11 Truth who help us make this all happen. Craig is prominent among them. So, folks, next time we see you, it's going to be the 24th hour next Saturday, September 7th, 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern. We'll see you there.